We're still dealing with this issue. So, gentlemen, let's now talk about the verdict in the first year of President William Ruto's government. And specifically, I want to pick a topic that I know is key to Kenyans' hearts, the topic of the cost of living. Last week, EPRA reviews, we saw the fuel price going up again. We've never seen an increase of that kind and crossing the 200 mark. And Kenyans are complaining. But my question tonight is this, Bilo. Do you think the government of William Ruto, in spite of all this noise, genuinely and honestly are oblivious that Kenyans are suffering, or there's just nothing they can do, honestly, from where they sit?
Well, the government cannot be oblivious of the situation of Kenyans for several reasons. One, Kenyans are speaking out daily, in the media and everywhere about the concerns, the challenges they're facing. Number two, government has a lot of information. Forget about the public information, the opinion polls, the data that has been published by so many different groups, but the government has its own sources of information. They have so many agencies and ministries of government. They have intelligence. They have, so the government knows the situation. I think two things in my view. One, they seem to be, which is what I believe, they seem to be incapable of finding appropriate solution to the problems, particularly to the economic challenges that we are facing. That seems to come out from the many of the ad hoc policies and declarations they have been making, and some of the actions. It would appear that they seem to be unable to. Number two, that could be one of the reasons. But number two, I think, is there's also a tendency sometimes with people in power to have that, know-it-all attitude. You kind of complacency sets in. You say, no, we're working on something. And this is why you see the repeated message that give us 6 months, give us 1 year, give us another year. It's too early. It's too early. We inherited. So that defiance, that, tired argument is because when somebody feels that, they know what they're doing, and, you can't tell us what to do. So it could be those two, but me, I personally believe it's because they've run out of ideas on how to turn around some of these things. They run out of ideas because it's painful to see a government that obviously seeks to come back in power in 2027, observe people hurt so much, and yet you still sometimes see the kind of arrogance that we saw with Moses Kuria and all. So you ask yourself, are we living in another world? Did these cabinet secretaries or did this government just crawl out of some boulder somewhere and doesn't understand what's happening? Or is just we can't do anything, like Bilo says?
Well, there are a number of things. Some of it is that when leaders become transactional, everything they do is that they want to get some kind of benefit out of it. As individuals, it becomes a dangerous institution. And number two, it is also clear that they're a bit oblivious of one thing, that incumbency has a burden. But they knew it last year when they were campaigning. That's why they gave incumbency to Raila by default. But today they are forgetting that whatever they are doing, even if they are hoping that they will change come 2026 for purposes of us getting some relief and saying it is a good story that was painful at the beginning, it may be too late.
That could be the strategy.
When people cross the line, they don't come back.
Okay.
Yeah, they go and they go because, as you know, even in marketing, when you disappoint a customer,
many times.
So, yeah, it will take almost 5 times an effort from you to win back the same customer. Therefore, when you disappoint millions of Kenyans who supported you with a lot of hope, and they are not seeing hope, and you have not been able to translate effectively your promises into a document that can also be believed to be policy direction for subsector ministries, it becomes a problem to communicate.
Okay.
Finally, I think they know where the problem is, but perhaps they are benefiting from these problems. Why am I saying...
At what expense?
At the expense of the public, because some people want to make money, and they know money can change the situation. I have a feeling, because many companies are running out of Kenya. running out of Kenya for many reasons, including this 1.5%. Take, for example, a company that is manufacturing here in Kenya and in Tanzania, and they are paying, their wage bill is about 480 million per month. And therefore 1.5 means 75 million per month.
Yes.
Per year, it is going to be about 900 million, almost close to $1 billion. What reason do they have? They have decided Kenya is going to be a distribution hub. They will go to Tanzania, manufacture,
yeah,
because it is cheaper to manufacture there.
Okay.
So these are some decisions that I feel some of the people advising the president may be top economists in this country, but they do not have practical knowledge of how to turn economic theories into reality.
Into reality.
There is also the leadership style.
Yeah.
I think the leadership style sometimes speaks to these challenges that we see with this government. You see an element of dysfunctionality. There's a disconnect. Even the best one is, for example, when you find one of the chief economists saying that our situation is we are in receivership, we are done, and his boss is in another country saying we are best placed to do business. Who would want to invest in a receivership in a company that is but there's a bit of disconnect, and you see roadside declarations, minister not responsible for this, giving information on the other. So there's a sense
of joint responsibility. I had when Nakumicha was firing someone, he said on behalf of my cabinet colleagues.
Yes, so that style of leadership, when you can profile government officials, profiling businesses, individuals, a whole unit in the State House which deals with communications, profiling companies, on social media. This company X, we're going to deal with you this way. You are a cartel. You are like this. People are labeled, all manner of names. You are the largest investor in this country. Never mind whatever mistake you may have done, but you are accused of being this or that, and you are told you have 3 choices. Leave this. The kind of the leadership style, and people tend to do what their bosses do. We say in our language, the kids, they play with what they hear their parents do at night, at home. So when you see, this is why you find some of the PS is also trying to outdo themselves in announcing things that they are not even in a position to do. Without, it's not even, they require government policy decision, or they require cabinet to do. But somebody announces and says, from next year, no shoes will come into this country. From next year, we are increasing salaries of this. From next year, we are going to do this. We are going to do that.
It doesn't fall within the army.
Yeah, and there's a process of government to, government requires decisions to be made bottom up. There are technical institutions in the ministries that should come up with the policies, and then goes up to parliament, up to cabinet. Then for the boss to now, give directions regarding those policies that have been brought to cabinet for approval. But when it's top down, everyone gives out his ruling, whether it's a CS or whoever, then tomorrow you find those things don't get implemented.
Okay. But I understand President William Ruto is a very hands-on person. So then you ask yourself, if he's so hands-on, and he came out during the contract signing and told them, if I know more about your ministry than you know, right, then what are you doing there? Which means he knows a lot that is happening. Then you ask yourself, then what is it? What's going on?
2 things. One, either is a know-it-all, which is in management. The guys who did management will tell you. But second is because if the quality of the people he has given the jobs is wanting, then it's true. He may know more about the ministry, but these people may have no time for the ministry. They may be engaged in all the things that he has mentioned. And that is where the Kenyans really have put their finger on. They've said there's lack of meritocracy in the appointment of people to government positions in the last 1 year.
Okay.
People have been appointed based on party loyalty, based on where they come from, based on who they are. More important, I think, the loyalties and chronism, and those are the things that have been looked at. And I think then you can't blame them if they cannot deliver.
Okay. They say there's an analogy about the kind of people that the president is working with, that the president is working with people he owes rather than people who owe him. it's a little bit different if he was working with people who owe him. All these people who are close to the president in one way or another worked for him to be president. So he owes them, so sort of makes his work a little bit difficult. But on this still, I don't still see the line, but perhaps you can make it more clear. So where would you stand? Not knowing what to do with it? Or we don't simply care? First
of all, on the earlier one you mentioned, you remember President Uhuru, in his last year in the campaigns, he was having problems with Mount Kenya. Him coming out very clear in those Sagana meetings that, you guys, you're not going to come back because you owe your positions, you have presence in parliament to me. But later, you saw what happened. It went the other way. So sometimes, yes, a leader can say, you owe your position to me, but the people can say also, you owe yours. We are the ones who campaigned for you to be elected as president. But I think the president has not thrown his arms and said, no, I don't know. The people who have been throwing their arms out are the people who are running their respective ministries. These are the cabinet. And this is why Kenyans expect the president to crack the whip on some of those cabinet ministers. If a cabinet minister can come out in public and say, look, misleading information, or simply say, I can't handle this, or we don't know where the country is going, you create a bit of desperation, you show lack of commitment and all those things. I think people expect the president to say, no, that's not our position as the government. And this is why the DP came out and says, no, you guys, you can't do what you guys are doing. But in my view, I have no doubt in my mind with matters economy, the government seems to be confused. They have no idea. They've got into a situation where they can't get out of some of the challenges we are facing.
How did the other governments get it right? I had the privilege of sitting with the retired President Uhuru Kenyatta, and one of the things that Uhuru said is, he is my president. If he seeks advice from me and invites me, I will go. How did the previous government do it? Because there seems to be a continuity in what was happening, yet here it seems it's a totally new outfit with totally new ideas being implemented in a totally different way. How did they do it?
A government is like a machine, and a machine that works has so many components that must move in tandem. Those components each must be a unit that is able to service itself and move, and the movement of the machine is the sum total of the movements of the components of that institution, of that machine. Now, if the government is not functional the way this one is, it is because certain components are not right. You see, I do not know whether there are policy papers that is trying to translate the manifesto into sectoral issues, whether it is food security subsector, whether it is infrastructure, so that the officers also understand. Because you see, the officers are a body that can make you win or lose. If you allow them to move, they will give you such a huge momentum that you will succeed. Now, the problem is what Chinua Achebe was able to see in his small book, The Trouble with Nigeria, which is now being translated into the image of Africa, that the problems with Africa is leadership. Anything, it's not about the human resource in Africa, it's not about the soil, it's not about the climate, it is lack of effective leadership. Because leadership entails your capacity to multiply yourself through the effort of other people. But if you micromanage and you want to understand every ministry and you assume those who are there are not intelligent enough, is a dangerous statement coming from a leader. In every ministry, there are many officers who know the ministry. I'm repeating this for clarity. And if the minister is allowed to create teams that will assist him to sift through the issues, and is still the ones which are a bit complicated, every ministry will run well. You don't have to have university education to run a ministry, but you just need to lead those officers and they will give you the right answers. Today, I'm so sure that the officers in various ministries are frustrated. I remember, and sorry I'm using my own example, 2003, when I took over the Ministry of Agriculture, we identified with my former minister, peers, that the problem in the Ministry of Agriculture, which was not much in the Ministry of Livestock, was the problem of the human resource. Some people had stayed in the same job group for 13 years without promotion. So we funneled out and we fast-tracked the promotions. The ministry's performance was spectacular. So it is about the people who are there. Use them. They know it.
Okay.
And we leave them there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me ask you before I go to Bilo. What I know styles of leadership, as you mentioned, are totally different. But would you say the late President Kibaki consulted the late President Moi during his time? Because I know President Uhuru Kenyatta consulted Kibaki and even consulted Moi at some point.
Well, Kibaki may not have consulted President Moi when he left office, but there are many things that we did as a government to make sure that we give him a respectable position, including the Cabernet Gardens house that he had lived as a vice president and subsequently as a president. Because we respected institutions of presidency. When somebody goes out, it doesn't mean it's over. It's still an institution among us. But one thing that identified Kibaki's presidency, he allowed us to make our mistakes and correct them.
As ministers?
As ministers.
Yeah. Okay. So it's not important that even the current president is not consulting the former president, because it can still work, right?
It would have been important, but given the kind of toxicity between the two, I would not expect them to consult each other. So perhaps with passage of time, they might get along. But also, what I request to my President William Ruto, allow your ministers to work. Don't be, if you are dealing with the chairman of a parastatal and the minister is not aware, it tells you something big came.
One other thing I think which you didn't mention about Kibaki was Kibaki's team, particularly those running the ministries and sort of were technocrats, people who really knew what they were doing, experts in their own field. The second thing is the independence that he gave. That independence means if Mr. Kirwa wanted to consult another party, it was free. But we are now in a climate where if you are a CS and you are trying to contact or consult Mr. Kirwa here, because he comes from a different political dispensation, you get in serious trouble. But that independence was also critical that Kibaki gave his ministries and his officers.
I saw Sifuna, ODM Secretary General and Senator for Nairobi, mentioned something once in a TV show that in reference to the dialogue, I'll just beg to deviate a little, that every single minute they're in the forums, there's a phone call. They have to get out and call the president. How do we go this? How do we handle this? So perhaps there's also some truth now that you.
That's why he corrected you. The word is not what you used. That the president is hands-on. No, he's micromanaging. That's the right word. That's where the trouble is.
Well, let me ask, because at the end of the show, they will ask, now the two gentlemen who have served this country, and we understand, and when we were introducing this, I said the best brains on television tonight, and some people said that's true, and they liked the pairing. So they'll ask, what is the solution? If Bilo was sitting there, what would Bilo do differently? What would he advise the president? Because you can't tell me how gloomy it is. You must have something, Bilo. How would this, especially for the cost of living, it's hurting everyone. How would it be corrected?
That's not something we can say in the few minutes, but we've been writing, we've been talking about it for nearly a year. And this is why, for me, my focus has always been that he should listen. But the most important quality of any leader is listening, what people say. Because the challenge with the economic problem we're having is fundamentally premised on the issue of the debt. Because that is what is causing the problem with the dollar crisis, with the exchange rate, which is a major issue. That is what is creating the problems with the high interest rates, because the government has to borrow at very high interest rates. And also because of the taxes. The taxes are also ostensibly to pay for the debt. So if I were him, I would spend more time really on addressing this issue of debt, including looking for all those multilateral or bilateral loan, lenders, and try to find a way in which we can reschedule them or address that issue of the debt. But I think to prioritize other issues like collect more revenue in an already depressed economy, I think it's totally misplaced. I wouldn't do that. I mean, it's a wrong time to tax, because then you are discouraging productivity, you are discouraging investors, you are making the cost of living situation only worse, and you cannot even attract investors. Even if you make 1,000 trips outside, I don't think it's that you have the right conducive environment for any investor to come in where there is high cost of energy, high cost of finance, and high cost of high taxes. And so I think primarily, he should use his charm to try and address the issue of, and our largest lender in the last many years has been China. So I would have thought that his first port of call would have been to China to try and see how we can address that issue of debt and try and get some relief, in the way he's doing it. So that's what I've done if I was.
Okay. Kira, what would you have done differently?
Basically, it's like what he's saying, but let me put it in my own language, not Kalenjin, but the way I understand it.
Yes.
The major problem in Kenya is the environment of doing business. Any investor would want to go somewhere where there's calm, there is certainty that you are certain when you put down $1, at this particular period it will be $1.50. That is basic principle. Therefore, create a good environment. What Mheshimiwa said earlier about harassing some of the companies is the wrong sign and the wrong signal you are giving to an investor, and therefore you are thinning your pool of investors. Number two, the issue of taxes. I remember Margaret Thatcher, when she was the Prime Minister of the UK, she was able to bring taxes, some from 98 to 60, from 80 to 40. And when she did that, there was serious growth within the economy. When you tax people, there is a limit to which you can still collect. For example, we took over in 2003 when VAT was 18%. We brought down VAT and we collected more. So it's not really the question of raising everything. Another important thing is the capacity to communicate coherently. When the government has a blackout, like the one we had one Friday, and the three institutions of government are giving three different reports, you are telling us we are living in dangerous times. Those are some of the things that you need to correct. And perhaps finally, it is good to respect even those who do not believe in you. When you respect me and we don't agree as friends, I will respect you more.
Okay.
So I would advise this regime that now they won the elections. They were pronounced by Chebukati, affirmed by Supreme Court. They are now in power. They should spend less time talking about the previous regime, whether there were mistakes or no mistakes. They should talk less about it. For 10 years of Kibaki administration, there is no single day he mentioned the name of President Moi. And remember, President Moi was his president. He was his deputy for 12 years. He sacked him, demoted him to Minister of Health. Later on, he resigned and he joined the opposition. And when he came back, he forgot to mention
it. Became a non-issue to him.
It became a non-issue to him.
Okay.
And the good thing with Kibaki, he never wanted to refer to people's names. So it was one way. So I think let them forget some of our names.
I tend to agree with him on something. I was in the opposition when they were in government. We were in Kanu.
Yes.
I was the shadow finance minister, I remember. But
you held on to that.
But it's true. I mean, Kibaki was not vindictive. I mean, there wasn't, you don't spend 24 hours talking about opposition here. Yeah. Every single rally they make now, visit they make this government is Raila this, Raila that, Mandamano, Sufria. But they keep on, it's just hammering. I mean, Kenyans have gone beyond that. They can see, really, their challenges. You talk about the challenges you have and how to address. I agree with him. They were not focusing, really. They were not looking at the rear mirror 24 hours.
Okay.
It gave us an opportunity now as a position to look at, their policies and criticize. That's why we were a bit more effective.
Was one of the periods that that checking the government was very effective.
Yeah.
It was very effective. But I want to bring in two issues. One, we're told that the debt in the last 1 year has increased with over 800 billion. That's one. Secondly, in spite of the increased taxes, they have not collected much. They have not hit the revenue target as at now. What does that say? I mean, we are 3 months post the beginning of the financial year, right?
Yes.
And the collections compared to the same period last year are not matching. And what was expected that if we increase the taxes and widen this tax base, actually we'll collect more. It's not happening. So it's a wrong strategy. That's what I'm getting tonight.
Clearly, that's what he just said. When you increase the tax, the tendency to evade taxes would increase. People will tend to find ways of avoiding taxes. And businesses, by the way, it will also reduce or dampen the demand for goods and services. So businesses that are operating at 80% capacity would suddenly find, because of the higher taxes, there is no demand for their products, and production goes down to about 40–50%. It is happening now. I am in an industry where of 15 factories in that industry, one of the largest industries, our production capacity is down to 40% because demand is low.
In the last year?
Because of the purchasing power.
Okay.
So that affects the taxes. Second, I think there is also, and I have to mention this, there is a problems of governance where you allow, for example, you created an institution like NTC and allowed people to import, people who are friends of the government, to import duty-free sugar, cooking oil, wheat flour, so many things. And in fact, we've reached a situation where I'm told individuals are now being given, duty-free, allowed to import things duty-free, something that has not happened in the last many years. And so when you start, politicizing KRA, and KRA starts, avoiding certain people and certain institutions, and the same things that you blamed the previous administration for, granting tax waivers and so forth and so forth. But more importantly, I think the most fundamental reason why the taxes are low is the economy itself is depressed. Businesses are not doing well. Many businesses are really struggling. And that's where the money is coming from. The money doesn't grow on trees. It comes from businesses. So if my business, my profitability is down. Last year I made a profit of X amount. Now I've made half the amount of taxes that I pay, whether it's VAT or whatever tax, it will be lower.
Okay.
That's the reason.
So this is a debate that we had post the finance bill, Kira. We're still there, and clearly in 3 months we are seeing it's not working because the same government is saying that we have not been able to meet our revenue target in spite of these measures that were put in place.
Yeah.
Well, we know the delay of the finance bill by at least a month or something, but it was implemented, but it's not working.
Yeah, there are many other small issues. They may sound an issue, but I told you when the body of government called the public service is a bit indifferent, even something which would have taken 1 day to process may take 5 days and therefore denies government revenue. Look, for example, even an issue of search. There are some files or some folios which are said to be in the Ministry of Lands and others in Survey of Kenya. So you go to the Ministry of Lands, you want to do a search to know whether the plot you are living in is still yours. You realize that the folio, the green card is not there. It is in Survey of Kenya. Now, then you have to go to Survey of Kenya. So you may take a week or two. And the money, possibly the transaction that you wanted to do with that plot will be delayed. And therefore the taxes that would have paid to government will also be delayed. Issues of inefficiency and also cartels that Kindiki Kithure is trying to remove from Nyayo House. Those are some of the moves that an effective administration should be able to allow people to work. But if you become so overbearing and start labeling people, it is dangerous, Ken, because this is our country. I may be in the opposition today, but it doesn't mean my children are in the opposition. They're innocent Kenyans. They happen to have had their father who does not agree with the current administration, but you cannot label them that they are opposition. So what we need to do is to change our attitude, to know that yes, you are here today. There are many great Kenyans who are on this space, but they are no longer there. The longest William can be here possibly is 9 years as president, or 4 years, whichever comes earlier. So, but still, we want him to be respected even when he's out of office.
Exactly. Bino.
You see, the one thing I want to clarify, you see, these taxes, just like every other business, it's based on the volume of transactions, the volumes of goods and services that are transacted. If for whatever reason businesses decrease and the volumes, whatever, the demand, everything, then what happens is that the level of taxes that you collect also go down. The only reason why our taxes have increased the last 1 or 2 years, by the way, is largely because of the imports, and because of imports are denominated in dollars. So if I am importing goods in dollars worth $1,000 and I'm paying tax on that, because of that exchange rate, you have been collecting more money. Sometimes it's not because the volume of imports have increased, but because of the exchange rate that you have been able to collect more VAT and more duty, and that's where the KRA has been making a lot of money. But in terms of the actual other sources of income tax, because employment you're seeing is almost stagnated in the country. Yeah. Corporation taxes, companies are performing, businesses are performing very poorly. So I think what, Mr. Kirwa mentioned earlier, when Kibaki, they moved the revenues from about 200-something billion to 800 billion. The tax environment was really never a problem to any investor, because they let the tax environment remain more or less what it was and allowed people to bring in business, increase productivity. Then the taxes can increase later, but we started the other way around. Tax people first.
When there's money, then you can ask them to give you a little more.
This one.
Okay. Now, in closing, I want you to look at the last 1 year and probably pass your verdict to this government and probably your projection going forward.
You start with Ella.
Okay. Why him? Your verdict.
My verdict, well, while you said that at the beginning, I've not engaged fully. I will have to break it into three.
Go ahead.
The president, the deputy president, and the cabinet. The president, for his intentions, I would give him a B. But in terms of deliverables, I would give him a C-. The deputy president, for his intentions, I would give him a C+. And in terms of deliverables, I would give him D+. The cabinet, in terms of lack of coordination, I would give them a bit of D plain. And in terms of output, there are only two ministers I see that I can, anyway, let me not name them, who are performing or they have intentions of performing. But you see, as I said at the beginning of time, when a cabinet is not in sync in terms of what they call collective responsibility. And collective responsibility does not mean, I, Minister for Finance, I'm going to fire an OCS. No, collective responsibility means the position that you take must be in tandem with the ministry that is affected by that decision. So that you have to cover for each other, but in a way that you are fully informed about what is going on in the cabinet. For example, if the three of us were ministers, Minister for Finance, because he's well-versed, Minister for Communication, and I, Minister for Agriculture, and we have an issue to do with communication and agriculture, he will come in as Minister for Finance to co-sign the document called Cabinet Memo. Then we'll prosecute together, and the action will be said, Minister for Information, action for you is to do 1, 2, 3. Minister for Finance is to source for resources. Minister for Agriculture, implement according to the government schedules. So I do not know whether they even had a government dispatch outlining each minister's role for them to realize that Moses Kuria does not deal with fuel. He does not deal with sports. He does not deal with foreign affairs. And he does not deal with issues of security.
Okay.
That is where I feel there is a mistake. It seems everybody wakes up in the morning, and when they see a camera, they open their mouth.
Overly, the grade. Overly, I know you've classified.
C.
Oh, C.
Yeah, C.
Do you see things getting better?
If they put their act together, unlike, I may not want even William Ruto to fire a single minister. I may not want him to fire a single minister. He should organize small teams into sectors and have some senior ministers to chair them, so that some issues that are brought to the cabinet are brought in a way that they have been properly distilled. And also remind him that before the Emperor of Ethiopia was removed from power, the junta that overthrew him eventually used to go to him. His minister is not good. He says, remove him. His minister is not good. By the time they were dealing with the 6th minister, they went to one morning and told him, all these 6 ministers, it is you who appointed them. It is, therefore, the problem is not the ministers. It is you we have come for.
Okay.
So the president should be careful. The moment you start firing people without getting to the depth of every issue, you run the risk of being fired by the people of Kenya.
Below. You
No,
and your opinion if things
yes,
will get better.
you see the executive authority of the executive, the authority of the power is vested in the executive power is vested in the cabinet, and the back stops with the president. So for me, there is no cabinet or deputy or whatever. The buck stops with the president. So the way I see the performance that the Kenyans gave them on those opinion polls, I see, but that is even very generous. I'm telling you, because of the expectations that they have built during the campaigns. And particularly on the issue of economy, because that was the whole thing. Their campaign was premised on economic revolution. That Kenyans down there, the bottom up. And in fact, after 3, 4, 5 months, the word bottom up even disappeared for a while. We didn't hear anymore about bottom ups.
Because Maandamano took center stage.
So I think now we are talking about other things, Silicon Valleys and electric buses and things. We are not talking about the bottom up issues. Have lost a bit of a moment. So I would tend to agree with that. The Kenyans, the C they gave them generous, but going forward, I don't see the situation getting any better. Really, I mean, because of the current situation we're in. Because of the current situation, the high taxes is discouraging people in business significantly. They don't see it, but we are there in business and we know what's happening. Business is not expanding. Nobody wants to invest further because the environment is not conducive. Number two, the issue again, which I think is the debt issue, has not been addressed. If you have not addressed this and you're piling in more debts, the 860, in my view, in fact, it will be more, to put in, according to their government own estimates, the one they did in the budget papers in February, in the 5 years, they're going to add an extra 5 trillion, to the debt. But let me tell you, unless they address that issue of the debt, going forward, the situation will only get worse. Because 80-90% of the money now will be used for whatever. The high cost of living will mean employees will require more money. The wage issue will come up. So a lot of things. So the situation is likely to get worse unless they really put their hands on the table and start addressing some of those things and enhance accountability and and deal with the issues that Kenyans are raising.
Okay, I think you agree with Kiro on that.
Yes, I agree. I agree with him, and I also wanted to remind Kenyans that for every time a dollar moves a unit, the debt portfolio increases, and therefore even without borrowing, if the dollar will go up to 160, the way it is projected
at 147 or 148 today.
Yeah, 148, it is likely that the debt will even balloon without even single borrowing. But this regime has also over-borrowed. For the 1 year, they have borrowed about 1.9 trillion. And worst of all is that they are borrowing domestically a lot of money and therefore squeezing money that would have gone to
pushing up interest rates to
and pushing the interest rates to go up.
In conclusion, for the first time that I've also been doing business in the last 12 years, the banks are harassing me.
Yes.
And I saw my interest rate at 23%. For the first time. I ask my RM every day, what's happening? The banks are harassing me. So I understand that environment. All right, I want to thank you, gentlemen, for coming tonight. Unless you have a final remarks on this.
Well, my final remarks is just to wish the current regime well.
Okay.
And wish them well in the sense that if they do well, our economy will improve. But more important, let them forget mentioning, dropping people's names carelessly.
Okay.
Uhuru Kenyatta is the retired president, allow him that space. Some of us, I think he told me as retired. I'm not retired, I'm just generally around.
What does that mean?
He's waiting.
That's it, I think, below, unless something.
No, I think I agree with him. The issue really is about the economy.
Yes.
And the government should appreciate the concerns of the people. The issue is dealing with what the people, listen to the people and deal with what they want.
Okay.
Don't focus on side shows, on other things happening in the rest of the world.
Okay. All right, and we are generally leaving the show tonight. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Ken Mijung. What a discussion tonight. You can catch it on YouTube. It's going to be there. And of course, we will try and get in and repeat it with the conversation with the two gentlemen, Bill Okero and Kipruto Arap Kirwa. On behalf of the whole team, thank you so much for watching. Let's do this again next week, same place, same time, whenever we have an opportunity. God bless and good night.